If you just so happen to listen to Jamey Eisenberg heading into week 2 of the season, well, you're doing just well. Jamey naming Lion signal caller Jared Goff as the start of the week. Goff putting up 5 touchdowns in Detroit's eventual win over the Bears. Those 5 touchdowns leading to 44 fantasy points, with some other fantasy leaders from Sunday's slate from week 2 includes his wideout, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who had 115 yards and 3 touchdowns in the win for some fantasy points there, 39.2. Jonathan Taylor picking up just shy of 30 in the Colts thriller against the Broncos, and Cowboys tight end Jake Ferguson lead the way with 16.8 fantasy points. And we're now joined by our fantasy tag team duo, co-hosts of the Fantasy Football Today podcast, Jamey Eisenberg and Adam Aizer, as we begin things with the start of the week. Jamey, your pick was Jared Goff, and you were spot on in his rebound performance, putting up those 5 touchdowns with a clean stat sheet to go with it, with the Lions' dominant win over the Bears. Jamey, is this what you expected to see out of Goff in week 2?
Oh, Kiana, he far exceeded my expectations. It was fun to watch, and really it kind of just set up the narrative was sort of easy to follow, and I think as we saw certainly Thursday night with that Packers defense, like that was just a perfect storm of everything falling apart for them in week 1, playing outdoors, first game without his coordinator, first game with a revamped offensive line, and playing what is going to be a very dominant Packers defense the night that, or the week that they get Micah Parsons. So it was, just a bad situation for him. Then he comes back home where he's always been better indoors, taking on a Bears defense, which I don't have a lot of faith in. It's going to be one of those matchups that we target. So it was great to see Goff perform at this level. But next week really is going to be the tough test for him and this entire offense, because now they have to go outdoors again to play the Ravens on Monday night in week 3. And so can the Lions continue to perform at this level? You're going to continue to start Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown with the utmost confidence, even if they struggle. It's really the other parts, including Goff. Can you trust them? Can you trust David Montgomery? Can you trust Jameson Williams and Sam Laporta, who was really the only one that got left out? I mean, I don't know why Goff couldn't get Laporta at least 1 touchdown, but it really was fun to watch in week 2.
Yeah, and honestly, just so everyone knows, Jamey called me earlier in the week and said, I think I want to make Cam Ward the start of the week. And I was like, listen, dude, just take it easy there. I think you should go with Jared Goff instead. Now, just get good call, Jamey. Good call. Maybe someday Cam Ward will have his day in the sun. But great performance by Jared Goff. Great performance by the Lions. At least if you had a bunch of Lions on your fantasy team or any Lions, you're thinking, all right, we can still get these types of games out of them. Because last week was rough, but I think we know the Packers are a brutal matchup. They're going to make a lot of offenses look really bad. I expect the Lions to have one of the best offenses in football. I wouldn't necessarily be trying to sell any of them, unless maybe you can take Jameson Williams and package him for somebody like Brian Thomas Jr. or A.J. Brown. That's a clear upgrade to me, but I think we're in good shape with the Lions. They're going to be really good going forward. Week 3 at Baltimore could be tough, but I do think that we should be mostly buying into this team.
Okay, Adam's saying we can still get these type of games out of the Lions, but you guys putting some question marks when it comes to some of those outdoor games, especially when it comes to Jared Goff. But I want to stick with the quarterback position, because possibly biggest news of the day, Joe Burrow exiting Cincinnati's win over the Jags in the second quarter with that toe turf injury. He was seen after the game not putting much weight on that foot. So Adam, what do you think is that fantasy impact of Burrow's and his injury at this point in the year?
Yeah, it's huge. It could be a 3-month absence based on some early reports. That's if he needs surgery. We don't know yet. But I will say this. They do have a backup quarterback that's done some pretty good things. And I'll give you the numbers on Jake Browning. He's only 2% rostered, so you got to get him in Superflex leagues. He made 7 starts in 2023. He was on pace for 4,537 yards, 27 touchdowns, plus another 7 rushing touchdowns, which I consider to be pretty fluky. He scored 23 or more fantasy points in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues in 5 of those 7 starts. He was really good. And he scored more than 20 fantasy points today, and it didn't even start the game. So I still think that Chase and Higgins can be good. I think Chase can be great. I think if we were drafting again today, Chase is probably like a mid to late first round pick instead of the number 1 overall pick. I think Higgins is probably around 4-ish, maybe round 5 kind of player. I'm worried about Chase Brown. He's not a great rusher. I was really more attracted to his opportunities and all the passes he was going to catch. I don't know what that's going to be like with Browning. So it's a pretty big downgrade, I think, for Chase Brown. It's a downgrade for Higgins. It's a slight downgrade for Chase. But I still think you're going to be starting those guys most weeks. I just don't know if they're going to be winning you your leagues like you were planning.
I think that's the best point Adam made. You're going to still start these guys most weeks. It's just a downgrade at least for now, because hopefully it's just not that Joe Burrow is that great, is that those players helped elevate Joe Burrow to a certain heights that they're going to hopefully elevate Jake Browning. But clearly you're just not going to trust Jake Browning by himself. A lot of fantasy managers are now looking for quarterbacks. So I'm in the process of writing a story for CBSSports.com about what to do to replace Joe Burrow. That story will be up, if not Sunday night, Monday morning. So you're looking at guys like Daniel Jones. You're looking at guys like Tua Tagovailoa, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Bryce Young. It's not the prettiest of lists, but maybe Daniel Jones could be the guy that saves fantasy managers that are dealing with this Joe Burrow injury. He's been 24 or more fantasy points in each of his first 2 starts. Does have a little bit of a tough matchup in week 3 against the Titans, just because Tennessee's defense, got to give him a little bit of credit. But you are now searching for options on the waiver wire. So we'll see what Geno Smith does, for example, Monday night, coming off a strong week 1 against New England. You might have to make some trades, but I do think you could be pivoting to potentially Joe Burrow to Daniel Jones. Who would have ever thought we'd be saying that? And Daniel Jones may save your season.
Not something that I expected I would hear coming into this season, but I'll most certainly, Adam, either. I'll certainly be looking forward to that article on CBSSports.com, because it looks like myself will be looking for a new quarterback as we head into week 3. But fellas, the Giants didn't come out on the winning side of their matchup, but did have some encouraging performances in that overtime loss to the Cowboys. Adam, we know Malik Neighbors, a must start in all leagues, but outside of their wide receiver 1, which Giant can you trust to start going forward?
Well, Daniel Jones is still on the Giants, right? That's why he's doing so. Oh, no, he's doing it on I don't think you can trust any of them week to week. I think Scadaboo may have just taken over the RB1 spot. He definitely did in the second half of that game. We'll see if it continues. Wan'Dale Robinson, I do think you can trust him to average about 11 PPR fantasy points per game. So if you're in a 3 wide receiver league, I would go out and add Wan'Dale Robinson. This was the best game of his career. I don't expect him to play a defense so inept as the Dallas Cowboys, but also consider this with the Giants. They have not had Andrew Thomas yet, and Malik Neighbors is probably their most important player on offense. Andrew Thomas, I think, is their second most important. He's their left tackle. I have a feeling he'll be back next week, if not next week, soon after that. So it might open up something for them. Russell Wilson did look really good in this game. We've had one terrible game from the Giants and one great game offensively from the Giants. I think Neighbors is the only one that I absolutely trust. Other than that, it's Wan'Dale as a number 3-4 wide receiver. And I am honestly thinking we're not going to be able to trust either of the running backs because they're both going to be too involved. Wilson will be a streamer in certain matchups while he's still the starter.
The one thing I do want to see from the running backs is we have to find Adam Sandler to say a scadaboo, because that's just something that we all have to hear just for our own aesthetically pleasing ears to hear him say that name. But I think in the case of the Giants moving forward, they get the Chiefs in week 3. That's going to be a brutal matchup for them. The Chiefs coming off 2 straight losses, and they just shut down the Eagles offense. It's going to be very difficult for the Giants to have a lot of success. And in the case of anybody not named Malik Neighbors, and it might be a plus, but it could be a negative, if they do make the switch to Jackson Dart, there's going to be some growing pains. So I think in the case of Wan'Dale Robinson, he's going to be one of the most added players, as he absolutely should be, because if we saw anything from the Chiefs game, Trent McDuffie on Malik Neighbors can make things a little bit tough for him. You're not going to sit him, but that could be where Russell Wilson goes as an alternate, is to Wan'Dale Robinson. And he's one of the more safest plays in PPR. He's going to get 5 or 6 catches on a weekly basis. He's going to get 50 to 60 yards. You're going to get your 11 or 12 PPR points. When he has a spike game like this, you'll be thrilled. I started him out of desperation in one league this week. I'm going to win because of it. But I think in the case of everybody else besides Malik Neighbors, it's a guessing game on a week-to-week basis.
Absolutely. I think what also is maybe a guessing game for me is which version of the Giants are we going to see this season? We saw a different one, like you mentioned, Adam. We saw one version in week 1, but a completely different version in week 2. Is it going to be kind of this back and forth depending on who they're facing? Still yet to be seen. But, fellas, I want to scour the waiver wire, if you don't mind. You know, we do have quarterbacks with some question marks, maybe some surprise performers who might still be out there. So, Jamey, give me your waiver wire target following week 2.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're going to be looking at the quarterback position a lot. So Jake Browning is going to be the one who's the most widely available. So when we talk about him compared to, let's say, to Daniel Jones in 1 quarterback leagues is the one that you want to look at first. But in Superflex and 2 quarterback leagues, which a lot of fantasy managers are going to be looking for quarterbacks, Jake Browning is going to be somebody we spend a lot of our fab money on, and one of the waiver wire priorities that you're going to be looking at. But I think in the case of Wan'Dale Robinson and Troy Franklin, 2 receivers that really stood out in week 2. For Robinson, again, you know what you're getting, and hopefully you get some of these spike weeks moving forward when Russell Wilson is throwing the ball ball down the field with a lot of success. And then Troy Franklin, he had a lot of buzz at the end of training camp. We saw them make the move to trade Devon Vele. This is a connection between Bo Nix and Troy Franklin going back to their time at Oregon, and it looked really good in this Week 2 game against Indianapolis. So Courtland Sutton's not going to get shut out and have quiet games often, but when we now start to see him pivot in terms of Bo Nix to somebody else, I think Franklin might be the guy that ends up being second on the team in targets and opportunities, maybe ahead of Marvin Mims, and certainly ahead of Evan Ingram at this point.
Right, and on the subject of Ingram, I think it's time to drop him. I think it's time to drop him and Mark Andrews. Look, you could easily regret that, but you got to take a chance on Juwan Johnson. He's playing almost every snap. He's got 20 targets in 2 games. He's 51% rostered right now. I expect that to be closer to 80 by the end of this week. Cedric Tillman just doesn't get enough credit. I'm surprised he's only 46% rostered because when he got going last year, he was out targeting everyone, including Jerry Jeudy. Today, he had 1 fewer target than Jerry Jeudy. He caught a fluky touchdown. He didn't have a great game, and he probably does need Flacco, but I still think Tillman's a guy to get. And I'm just going to give a name that no one's going to talk about because he hasn't played yet. I don't know when he's going to play, but if you don't need anyone right now, I still think Christian Kirk is a great option at wide receiver. It's like a better version of Wan'Dale Robinson. He's a guy that I was drafting in a lot of leagues before the season started. He hasn't practiced yet. I'm really hoping he's back in week 3 or 4, but Christian Kirk could be a guy that is 12 to 13 PPR fantasy points per game. It's obvious the Texans really need someone other than Nico Collins in the passing game, so keep an eye on Christian Kirk because no one else is.
Okay, also, I really like what you said there about Juwan Johnson. He did have 5 receptions in that loss to the 49ers, but he did have 2 crucial drops that could have made this even better performance from him. But, fellas, I'm going to be taking that advice because certainly needed so far in week 2. As always, Jamey, Adam, fellas, thank you so much. And if you want more from where that came from, you're definitely going to want to check out Jamey and Adam alongside Dave Richard and Heath Cummings to bring you the best of the best to help you dominate your league. Fantasy Football Today podcast. Download and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.